I'm Jim Hartz. Our criminal justice system works in courtrooms like this to answer three basic questions. What laws were broken, who broke them, and how should we punish the lawbreaker? The system is well designed to answer those questions. But if justice means restoring peace to our communities, then the system is failing. Failing because it is unable to make our streets safe or reduce the fear that many live with daily. Failing because fear often leads victims to seek revenge. And revenge to most victims means prison. But prison has proved ineffective as a way to reduce crime and fear. In the United States, we now hold more people in prison than ever before. Yet crime and fear are still rampant. And the cost of building and operating more and more prisons is bankrupting other vital public policies. Out of the faith community came a growing concern that justice as retribution or revenge is not only failed policy, but also conflicts with basic beliefs. So, from the faith community, from the academic world, and victim advocates, from police and correction officers, and officers of the court who have seen the failures of retributive justice, a new way of thinking is beginning to emerge. It's called restorative justice, and it asks one basic question: how do you make victims of crime, offenders, and their communities whole again?
I'm going to do whatever it takes. I mean, the worst thing for me is that seeing all of you here, knowing that some of you are mad at me and some of you, I mean, absolutely hate me for what's happened, and some are scared of me. I don't want anybody to be scared of me.
A victim and offender meeting face to face to resolve the hurt. That's restorative justice. Men serving time by cutting firewood to provide fuel for the poor and earning back a place in their community. That's restorative justice.
Are you part of any of that?
No, I'm trying to get on the junior council, though.
An ex-offender, having learned from his mistakes, helps an at-risk teenager. That's restorative justice.
Restorative justice says that crime is basically about harm. It's a violation of people and the relationships between people. So instead of defining crime as breaking the law, it defines crime as violating people. Instead of saying the state is a victim, restorative justice understands that people and communities are the victims, that real people are hurt. And so justice ought to be about establishing needs and obligations so that things can be made right in some way.
To incarcerate someone for a year cost anywhere, conservative figure, $15,000 to $22,000, and that's very conservative, and I'm not factoring in all the other costs. For that kind of money, we could send people to Morehouse or to Harvard. It just does not seem to make sense to continue to spend millions of dollars incarcerating people and run a 65% recidivist rate.
Putting people in jail has just proved to us that it just doesn't work in all cases. There are cases it's necessary, there's no question, where we have to protect the community, but there are so many instances that it just doesn't solve a problem. And it just simply creates more problems.
There's one thing that the public hates, we all hate, that is someone coming back out of our prisons and offending again. And we say, well, what was that all about? We spent all of that time, all of that money, waste of lives, and we've come back out with a person who's not restored, you know, a person who is going back into the same life. And that's the worst case scenario for any of us. So there has to be something better in its place.
Restorative justice is not about being soft on crime. It's about being real and focusing upon the real damage and not just continuing this kind of trail 'em, nail 'em, jail 'em mentality, which is totally offender-focused and offender-driven, and which, ironically, as I've said before, it just keeps victims on the sideline and does not deal with their needs.
With retributive justice, the courtroom is a battleground. The state over here fights to establish guilt, and the defense over there tries to beat back that challenge. The community, represented by the judge and the jury, declares a victor. But one important party is missing: the victim. Victims are seated behind a barrier, separated from the action. If they're involved at all, and that's by no means certain, it is to assist the state. They have no real voice in the outcome. Victims rarely have anyone to even listen. This isolation leaves victims confused, angry, and fearful, and often in pain.
He died in the van, and the other fellow left lay there all night.
Unlike our present justice system, when restorative justice is practiced, the victim is central. There are a wide range of measures designed to help the victim become whole again. It starts with someone who will listen.
We need these answers. For some closure. It's just like an open wound unless you can find out the answers.
I've had nightmares almost at least 3-4 times a week ever since it happened.
This young man and two friends went exploring in a building under construction. They set some fires.
Going in there and when I put the fires out, I thought nothing else would become of that. That they were out, that was it. Case closed, go home, go to sleep, go on with my life. But things didn't happen that way.
The fires were not out. The building that burned as a result was part of a retirement home where these people lived. The fire terrified them.
And if you ever see window glass melting right in your face, you'll know what I mean. There's flames 40 feet high when I looked out the window.
These victims met voluntarily with two of the offenders in separate sessions of what are called victim-offender mediations. Few mediation sessions have been videotaped because of the confidential and emotional nature of these meetings. This type of mediated, voluntary meetings between victims and offenders is one of the most visible expressions of restorative justice. For victims, it's their chance to get some vital answers.
It's a very traumatic experience that I never want to experience again. And I hope you young men understand what you did.
Victims typically have no input. They're kept on the sidelines. They have all kinds of questions like, why me? Why did you pick out my house? Were you stalking me? Did you have any idea of the terror you caused in the lives of our family, our kids? Our kids can't sleep at night. We're thinking of moving. What kind of person are you? One of the things we've learned over the years is there's a power in victims meeting with offenders. There's a power there that can be incredibly helpful for victims in terms of moving beyond the victimization, getting a greater sense of healing and closure and just taking more power and control in their lives, and for offenders to begin learning that victims are people. They're not just targets and objects. They're real people, like offenders' own families.
And I was really afraid that people had died.
In a separate mediation session, another of the boys met with the arson victims.
I was really upset at myself. I mean, there is no excuse for what I did, and there's not a big sorry that I can say.
The notion of going back eyeball to eyeball with the people you violated is not easy. I have seen tough strutting around felons who are tremendously nervous and anxious as they walk up to the home of the victim with me as a mediator to enter into a dialogue about what happened. So on the one hand, it's a way of, in a constructive way, holding the offender accountable. It's not demeaning. It's trying to denounce the behavior, but not the person. And it's also an opportunity for the offender to make amends, to take responsibility.
Victim-offender mediations normally result in a written agreement about financial restitution. Victims also recommend how any community service time should be served. Like everyone else, the Red Lake Band of the Chippewa Indians has its share of problems with its young people. Native American tradition, like the Maori, suggests that problems are often more easily solved if everyone sits down together and talks over the dispute. So, the Red Lake Chippewa are beginning to apply a traditional judicial process that is both very old and very new to manage disputes.
It was borrowed from a concept from the Navajo Nation. They have peacemaking sessions in their court system. And we borrowed that concept and changed it to fit our needs. And so we began to call it talking circles. It's a form of mediation to settle disputes.
And there are rules that are made up for the sessions. Like everyone will have a chance to explain their part, and then, but when a person is talking, that only that person can talk and everybody else listens. There's no threats or name calling, things of that matter, and it's just done in a good family setting way that like the old people used to do back in the good old days, and to do things, talk things over, and so that there are no winners and no losers, and everyone involved will come out and well satisfied with what went on in that session.
In the public library in Bemidji, Minnesota, a young man convicted of breaking and entering and drunk driving must face people from his community. Along with individuals, the community is also the victim of crime. And Bemidji's community response to crime forcefully brings that home.
And when I hear a sound in my house, because I live alone, I wonder who's there. I wonder if somebody's going to come and do something, take something that I love, or hurt me. And because of this, I'm afraid and I'm sad. And I'm afraid one of us or both of us could get hurt.
I think it makes him aware that he's not just hurting the person that he violated. He didn't just break into one person's house. He made grandmas afraid. He made young people afraid that they will be victimized. He really has impacted the community. He's made that community unsafe for all the people that live there because of his one act. And he should have gone to prison this time. Instead, the community came forward and said, we'll try him. We will try to help him first.
There are many ways to include victims in the justice system and many levels of involvement. From simply listening to their pain to face-to-face mediation, involving the victim is at the heart of restorative justice. Many in the restorative justice movement acknowledge that there are some people who must be confined to protect society and themselves. But prison is not the only answer, and for most offenders, it's not the best answer. If our justice system has failed victims, it has failed offenders too.
There's always going to be prisons in this society. We need to reserve that prison space for those people who truly need to be removed from the streets of our society. And not everyone who comes into prisons across this nation need to be in prisons. They can be dealt with in community-based programs, sentencing to service programs, halfway houses, which are cheaper, more efficient, and making the transition from a lockup into the community is very traumatic and very difficult. And if they're never removed from that society, we can make that easier on the offender as well. And thus, I think the risk to the citizenry out there is also reduced.
It is late fall in the mountains outside of Bend, Oregon, and the whistling wind serves notice of the coming winter. This work crew is racing the first snowfall to complete a hiking trail along an alpine lake in the Willamette National Forest. But these men don't work for the U.S. Forest Service. They're serving time. They are also serving their community and themselves. Dennis Maloney got the idea after watching prison inmates lying around watching TV and smoking cigarettes.
There's a phrase in our business, hard time ain't hard to do. And I think that's really become true. So I started thinking, how can we challenge them to realize what they did to somebody? And then furthermore, how can they earn their way back into the community's good graces? We're seeking what I would call earned redemption, and it's our job to provide to that opportunity. We are under contract with the National Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, the municipal governments. We do service for them. They give us money. That money goes to offset the cost of the program and pay the victims their restitution. Our budget for our work program is $500,000. The revenue that we take in from the work that we do is $485,000. We're $15,000 away from being self-sufficient. When we go into the black, We're going to take the earnings and invest them in prevention somewhere in the community, preventing child abuse, preventing domestic violence, because that's the source of our problems in the first place.
If restorative justice is to succeed, it must help prison inmates make a successful return to their community.
Community reentry is a community-based corrections program operated by the church, which provides practical assistance and support to men and women who return to the community after a period of incarceration. The program is undergirded by the philosophy that people more readily act their way into a new way of thinking than think their way into a new way of acting. So community reentry attempts to give ex-offenders an opportunity to act in new ways in the community.
The Redcoats are a welcome sight for the people of the Miles Elmarge housing complex, people like Ossie Dale. The Redcoats are worn by ex-offenders who have been chosen to be part of a community care team. They are acting their way into the good graces of their community.
Whatever their crime or whatever they might have done is in the past, and we as citizens should give them a beautiful chance, in which this building have done. I don't know what we as seniors and we as disabled peoples would do without them. They goes to the store for us. They pick up our medicine when we doesn't have anyone to do this for us. So whatever their past life is in the past. This is the future.
It feels good to have people trust you rather than everybody fear you. A lot of people used to fear me, and the tables have turned, you know. It's very rewarding, you know. I wouldn't trade it in for the world.
They give me the keys to their house, anything. I got their rent, their phone bills, the rent receipts. I go pick up their medicine. Hey, I'm gonna stay.
Feels good to be trusted, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what it is. Feel good to be trusted.
You know, so much has changed. The city's changed. When I get out, I still have to face the issues of where am I going to get a job when you have to write down, yes, I'm an ex-convict.
Justice has become a county or a state or even a federal government function. But historically, justice was a local issue. When one member of the community harmed another, the community provided the response. Restorative justice seeks to return that power to the community. Restoring power requires people to re-engage themselves in the affairs of their neighborhoods.
We've noticed that one of the main reasons that people commit crimes against their neighbor and their community is, tragically, they have no bond with their community. If we can line up service projects where our people are actually helping to ease the suffering of others, by building shelters, by taking care of the poor, by making sure that our seniors have warm, safe homes with adequate firewood, that they start to build that bond. And you know what? If we can get offenders to have a bond with their neighbor and their community, that is safer than a 10-foot thick prison wall.
Well, Officer Brothers. Here. Okay, we're going to go out and mount up and going to tour Sector 1.
One way to help people become invested in their community is through an active partnership with police departments. It's called community policing, and in Cleveland, it's begun by police getting out of their cars and onto bikes. Mayor Michael White thinks it's about time.
The car, the invention of the car in policing was a terrible thing, because after the car came air conditioning, and after the air conditioning came power windows, and the windows went up, and people were able to kind of disengage from each other. And what we're trying to do is to roll the windows down, figuratively turn the air conditioning off, and get people to communicate. Community policing is really just a program of back to the future. You know, in the old days when I was a child, I did my share of standing on the corner. And there was a police officer out there. We all knew him. He all knew us. There was a relationship, a partnership between the police department and the citizens. And it was not born out of just a crisis situation. It was born out of the knowledge that we had to work together to keep the bad people out of the community.
I guess in terms of a policy direction, what I'd like to see this nation do is, yes, let's focus on those very dangerous people that we know are going to harm others. And we do need facilities to do that. But let's come up with very creative ways to kind of incapacitate people in the community through this supervision, work, service, victim offender mediation so that we're not having to spend the money on them, and then we could be investing in prevention strategies.
As you can see, restorative justice is real. It's not merely a fanciful notion. The principle is at work today in hundreds of alternative sentencing projects, in thousands of victim offender mediations. It's most often applied to young, nonviolent offenders. But restorative justice has also proven effective in every type of criminal proceeding. In one state, it's officially at work as the corrections policy. Kay Pranis is the restorative justice planner for the Minnesota Department of Corrections. She's the first person in the country to hold such a position.
The court process insulates offenders from understanding the human consequences of their behavior. They know about the legal consequences of their behavior. They don't know very much about the human consequences, how other people's lives in very intimate ways were affected by what happened.
Kay has seen restorative justice at work in tiny hamlets and urban centers. She has consulted with academic experts and people who live and work every day on the front line of the justice system. And she is convinced that restorative justice can work in any political atmosphere.
It emphasizes both individual responsibility, which is pretty much a traditional conservative value, and community responsibility, which is a more traditional liberal value, and says that neither one of these alone is the answer, that both ends of the political spectrum have had an understanding that's correct, but not a complete understanding, and that we can combine these understandings and find more productive ways to respond to crime and to stop arguing with one another.
Restorative justice is not a panacea. It can't solve the social issues that underlay crime. It can't eliminate the ravages of drugs and addictions. It can't end racism and hatred. But it does lead to a new and more positive direction. It puts a human face on victims and offenders. It works to make people and communities whole rather than split them apart. And it offers the hope of redemption, not only for the offender, but for the whole human family.
Studies of restorative justice in North America, Europe, and the South Pacific have found that the general public is supportive of many restorative justice interventions, particularly victim offender mediation, restitution, and community service. Victims of crime involved in restorative justice programs are more likely to say they were treated fairly by the justice system. Offenders involved in restorative justice programs are more likely to be held directly accountable to the individuals and communities they harmed. Victims of crime are more likely to receive restitution for their losses. Offenders are more likely to successfully complete their restitution obligation to their victim. Victims of crime are less fearful of re-victimization after meeting the offender and telling them the impact of the crime. Offenders in restorative justice programs commit fewer and less serious additional crimes. For those interested in receiving more information about restorative justice, including articles, information packets, research reports, books, videotapes, and training and technical assistance that's available, contact Center for Restorative Justice and Mediation.